Oleg the Prophet, also known as Oleg the Wise, emerges in the Viking television series as a formidable leader, but the portrayal of his character in fiction hardly reflects the complexity and grandeur of the real historical figure. Oleg was a semi-legendary Varangian prince of the Rus, who became the Prince of Kiev and laid the foundations of the Kievan Rus state. He subdued many of the East Slavic tribes to his rule, extending his control from Novgorod to south along the Dnieper river. At the height of his power, Oleg carried out a military strike against Byzantium in the year 907. The Byzantine Empire was one of the richest in the world at the time, and Oleg landed a huge army in Thrace and began to plunder it, following which the Byzantines offered peace to the Rus. In a fascinating twist of fate, the Byzantine envoys attempted to kill Oleg by offering him poisoned food and wine. Yet, Oleg, known for his legendary foresight and near mystical powers, saw through the treachery and refused the poisoned cup, an act that further solidified his status as a figure touched by the gods, earning his name the Prophet. Oleg ruled for around 30 years, during which he transformed from a pagan Varangian raider into one of the founding fathers of the Russian state. His reign bridged the worlds of Norse warriors and Slavic rulers, and he left behind a legacy filled with both myth and reality. He united scattered tribes and laid the groundwork for a state that would grow into one of the most influential powers of medieval Europe. This is his story. The origins of Prince Oleg remain shrouded in mystery, with very little known about his parentage. Ancient sources, however, mention him as a member of the retinue of Prince Rurik, the founding leader of the Rus. According to the Joachim Chronicle, Oleg was described as Rurik's brother-in-law. Both men are believed to have belonged to the Varangian tribe, Viking conquerors, traders and settlers, most notably from present-day Sweden. These fearless seafarers ventured far from their northern homelands, establishing themselves in lands we now know as Belarus, Russia and Ukraine. It is from these Varangians that the name Rus is thought to have originated, derived from an Old Norse term meaning the men who row. The Russian primary chronicle recounts a time in the mid-9th century when East Slavic and Finnic tribes in the years 860 to 862 had successfully driven the Varangians out of their lands and rejected paying them tribute. This period of independence, however, soon descended into chaos as the tribes soon turned upon one another in a struggle for power. Faced with internal discord, the tribes sent out an invitation to the Varangians, hoping they would restore order. Rurik, along with his kin, including Oleg, answered the call, arriving in Novgorod to re-establish stability. Rurik ruled until his death in around the year 879, at which point he bequeathed his realm to Oleg, entrusting him with the care of his young son Igor. Rurik hoped that Oleg would act as a wise regent who would not only protect Igor, but also make sure he assumed the throne when the time came. Oleg did indeed take up the mantle of ruler, succeeding Rurik in Novgorod in the year 879, but it was in the year 882 that his legend truly began to take shape. Determined to expand his rule, Oleg gathered a vast army composed of various tribes, including the Varangians, the Teuts, the Slavs, and set his sights on the city of Smolensk. From there, he would march towards Kiev, where Askold and Dir, the earliest known rulers of the city, held sway. Upon reaching the hills surrounding Kiev, Oleg devised a brilliant and cunning plan to seize power. Oleg hid his warriors in longboats, left others behind, and went forward himself bearing the child Igor. Oleg also sent messengers to Askold and Dir, representing himself as a merchant on his way to Greece, on an errand for Oleg and Igor, the prince's son. Oleg, pretending to be a merchant, requested that the two rulers come forth and greet them. Askold and Dir straight away came forth. Then all of Oleg's warriors jumped out of the boats, and Oleg said to Askold and Dir, "You are not princes, nor even of princely stock, but I am of princely birth." Igor was then brought forward, and Oleg announced him as the son of Rurik. Askold and Dir were then murdered and buried atop a large hill. After that, without resistance from the people of Kiev, Oleg settled to rule the kingdom, proclaiming it as the mother of Rus cities. Kiev's strategic location, nestled in fertile lands of the south, offered significant advantages for growth and control. Its position allowed for rapid population expansion and easy access to essential resources. Additionally, Kiev was a vital hub for trade and transportation. Upon seizing control of the city, Oleg recognized the city's immense potential. Seeing its advantageous position, he declared Kiev the new capital of his realm, solidifying its importance as the heart of the future state. To secure and strengthen his new territory, Oleg embarked on a campaign to fortify the region. He ordered the construction of strongholds and fortresses, creating outposts to protect the land and ensure the loyalty of its people. As he expanded his influence, he began to build cities across the lands of Rus, laying the foundation for a unified and powerful state. Oleg the Prophet then turned his attention to the neighbouring tribes and began to force them into submission. Previously, they paid tribute to the powerful state nearby, the Khazar Khanate, a nomadic Turkic people that established a major commercial empire covering the southeastern section of modern European Russia, southern Ukraine, Crimea, and Kazakhstan. Oleg was successful in making the neighbouring kingdoms pay tribute to him instead of the Khazar Khanate. The story of Oleg's legendary campaign in Constantinople in the year 907 is preserved in the Russian Primary Chronicle, a tale filled with both historic events and vivid elements of folklore. Passed down through generations, the details of this campaign may have been embellished over time, but the core of the story reveals Oleg's brilliant strategy and audacity. According to the Chronicle, Oleg left Igor in Kiev with his new wife Olga, while he gathered a vast army from various Slavic and pagan tribes. Commanding a formidable fleet of 2,000 ships, Oleg set sail for Tasgard, the ancient name for Constantinople, determined to strike at the heart of the Byzantine Empire. Upon arriving at the city, he found that the Byzantines had fortified the straits and closed off access to the city. Undeterred, Oleg ordered his ships to be beached. His warriors would then raid the outskirts of Constantinople, wreaking havoc on parts of the city. They slaughtered many of the Greeks, burned palaces, destroyed churches, and took prisoners. In a brilliant tactical move, Oleg ordered his men to attach wheels to the ships, and with favourable winds, they began to drag the fleet over land towards the city. The sight of the ships seemingly sailing on the land, as if they were still floating on the sea, struck fear into the hearts of the Greeks. Terrified, the Byzantines sent emissaries to Oleg, pleading for mercy and offering to pay any tribute he demanded in order to spare the city. When the messengers arrived, they presented food and wine to Oleg as a gesture of submission, but Oleg, ever cautious, suspected that the offering might be poisoned. In a legendary moment, he poured the wine onto the ground in front of the Byzantine envoys, refusing to drink. This act earned him the epithet of the Prophet for his ability to foresee treachery. The Greeks, overwhelmed by fear and awe, remarked, "This is not Oleg, but Saint Demetrius, whom God has sent upon us." Saint Demetrius was revered as one of the most venerated military saints of the Orthodox faith, a defender of the faithful and a protector of cities. It is curious that a pagan ruler like Oleg, known for his fierce and warlike ways, should be linked to such a saintly figure. Perhaps it was Oleg's reputation for mysticism and his uncanny foresight that prompted the comparison. His wisdom and near prophetic abilities had clearly made a deep impression on his enemies. Following the destruction and fear that Oleg's forces had wrought, the Byzantine Emperor Leo the Wise was compelled to offer terms of peace. The tribute he paid Oleg was no small sum, making the Rus prince a wealthy and powerful man. As a symbol of his triumph, Oleg boldly nailed his shield to the gates of Constantinople, a gesture of unparalleled defiance and a testament to his victory over the great city. In the year 911, the two powers formalized their newfound peace with a treaty, which is now regarded as one of the earliest written sources of Kievan Rus law. This treaty solidified the solid and durable friendship between the Rus and the Greeks, ensuring that neither side would harm the other. This arrangement not only marked the conclusion of a great conflict, but also laid the groundwork for a lasting and influential relationship between two great civilizations. Oleg ruled peacefully in Kiev, maintaining harmonious relations with all nations. As autumn arrived, he was reminded of a horse he had carefully tended but never ridden. Years earlier, he had consulted seers to learn the cause of his death, and one had warned, "It will be from the steed you love that you should meet your end." Disturbed by this prophecy, Oleg decided to never ride the horse again. He ordered it to be well cared for, but kept it out of sight, letting several years pass. After his campaign against the Greeks, 4 years had gone by, and the memory of his horse resurfaced. Curious, Oleg summoned the squire and asked about the horse's whereabouts. The squire revealed that the horse had died. Laughing, Oleg mocked the prophecy, saying, "Soothsayers speak lies. Their words are false. The horse is dead, and yet I am still alive." He ordered a new horse to be saddled and rode to the place where the horse had been buried. Dismounting, Oleg scoffed at the skull, saying, "Is this where my death was meant to come from?" He then stamped on the skull in a jest, but as he did, a serpent crawled out and bit him on the foot. Soon, Oleg grew ill and died, thus fulfilling the prophecy. His people mourned deeply for him, and they laid him to rest on a hill. Oleg passed away in the year 912, leaving behind a legacy that would forever shape the course of history. As promised to Rurik on his deathbed, Oleg ensured that Rurik's son Igor would ascend to the throne of Kiev. This marked the fulfillment of his vow, passing the mantle of leadership to the next generation. During Oleg's reign, he arranged for the young prince Igor to marry Olga, a union that would become central in the future of the Kievan Rus. Olga at the time of her marriage was just a child, perhaps 10 or 12 years old, a decision that reflected the political nature of royal alliances. Some chronicles even suggest that Olga may have been Oleg's own daughter, tying her directly to the bloodline of the Prophet prince. However, other sources dispute this claim, leaving a question mark over Olga's exact parentage. Regardless of her lineage, Oleg's role in shaping the Kievan Rus cannot be denied. As a pagan ruler with mysterious powers and Viking roots, he was a cunning and calculating figure who forged an empire that was ahead of its time. He built an extremely rich and powerful state that challenged the might of Constantinople itself. Oleg was a visionary, a man whose influence resonated far beyond his time, standing among the greatest figures of his generation. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you all soon for another History Profile.